Afternoon, everyone. I am pleased to introduce our guest, Colin Grogan, today. Now, a lot of you will know Colin. He is our under-18s manager and involved with the reserves. But it's important for people to know and to have a greater understanding of what Colin does in his 9 to 5 Monday to Friday job. And some of you may be surprised by what he does. Colin's official title is Sport, Health and Inclusion Development Manager at Suffolk County Council. Good to see you all. Good of Rob to invite me along to sort of talk to you. Obviously, I see lots of you on a sort of weekly basis, although not in the last few months, from a football perspective. But what Rob's asked me to do is just come along and give you a little bit of a chat about what I do in terms of my work role. So I thought probably starting off with my school. I left school in 1982, and this is probably a fair summary of my sort of report for school. Not something I'm particularly proud of, but I left school with no qualifications, and obviously leaving with no qualifications is not the best thing to do. It reduces your options. So I then spent 6 months working in a factory, trying to work out what I wanted to do, and came to the conclusion that going into farming would be the thing for me. But having sort of spent a couple of years doing that particular job, I realised that it really wasn't the job for me, and so I started to look for something else. And having always been very sporty and very active and enjoy my football and all those sorts of things, I was looking for a career change. And at that time, there was a leisure centre just been built, and this is going back a long time, but in 1986, which is when I first joined the leisure centre, there was very few of them. They were only just really being built. But I applied for a part-time position, was successful in getting that. So I worked on the farm at the same time as working in the leisure centre. So having spent 6 months working both full-time and part-time alongside each other, I then was successful in getting a full-time position, working in the leisure centre. So that became my sort of full-time position. And at the same time, I then decided to go and do a vocational qualification in supervisory management. And that course is probably not too dissimilar to much of what you guys are doing in terms of your BTECs and MBQs, but maybe focused a little bit more around operational management. So, I got a really good insight in terms of how to run facilities, from staffing to finance to marketing, and just generally started to understand what running a big leisure facility was about. And ultimately, it's about the customers, the people that are walking through the door, and how do you ensure that they get the best possible service and enjoy their experience so that they keep coming back. Having spent a couple of years doing that, got myself a qualification. It was time for me to look for a progression. I wanted a promotion. I wanted to start getting into at least a supervisory or management role. Got the job as an assistant manager at Gainsborough Sports Centre and spent 2 years there managing the facility on a daily basis as a manager, developing activity programs, looking after reception, catering, the bars and that sort of stuff, before then moving on to Crown Pools. So I went there as the marketing manager, so spent probably about 4 years as marketing manager. So within that role, it was very much about how do we promote the facility, how do we generate more revenue, how do we bring more people into the service. So my focus was very much around working with the local media and partners to generate more business. And then I was appointed to operations manager, so took responsibility for running all of the leisure facilities. The experience that you get in terms of customer interaction, working in those facilities is brilliant in terms of developing your communication skills. You're meeting people on a daily basis, but you're also starting to understand how a service like that operates, both in terms of health and safety, some of the things that you have to do in terms of managing finance and reception staff, through to the plant and operation that needs to be sort of maintained in order to keep the facilities running. So there's a variety of different opportunities to gather a lot of different skills. Probably one of my most memorable moments
was winning the It's a Knockout tournament with the team from the Crown Pools. We won it at the Millennium Dome in London in the year 2000. The reason I put that up is as much about there was a group of people there that all came together for work purposes, a variety of different skills and backgrounds, and we were by no means the favourite to go and win that tournament, but actually it was the way that everybody came together. No different to you guys in terms of the way you play your football and you come together on a weekend to sort of support each other and work together. But we had a mixture of skills that sort of got us through and ensured that we won that particular tournament. So I left the leisure facilities in 2009 and moved into public health. So within that, and I have a number of different roles and areas of work that I get involved in. But one of the main areas of work is what's called the Most Active County Events Programme, which is what I'm going to spend the next sort of 10 minutes just sort of talking through as to what it is, how it works, and what it means. The events programme really is about trying to use some major events as the inspiration to get people active, and then developing a range of different interventions that sit below that, which people can then do on a local, weekly, regular basis to start to move them into some form of regular activity. So as I said, the main focus of my work is managing a significant events programme, from major sporting events that happen in the county to those more sort of integrated programmes within community settings. All of these events require significant partnership working, planning in terms of management of roads. So, you know, the diversity of the work that I do will mean working with highways, looking at traffic management plans, working with network assurance to make sure that cars can continue to run at the same time as runners. So there's a lot of things that go on when you see these events sort of taking place. There's an awful lot of things that have to happen prior to that in order for them to happen. You know, what I wanted to illustrate is that I had no idea when I left school what I was going to do. And as I sort of illustrated again, that, you know, I came out of school with little or nothing in the way of qualifications. And I think you go on a journey and you find your way, unless it's pre-mapped for you because of you're particularly good at doing something specifically. I think your career can take a number of different turns and changes before you actually find out what's right for you. I wish I'd got more qualifications coming out of school, because it would have given me perhaps more options. But at the same time, it doesn't stop you. It's important to do the best that you can with your education, but don't necessarily think that just because someone's got a degree and you might not have, that's going to stop you getting where you want to be if you really want to be there.
I've known and been friends with Colin for many years now, and worked with himself and his colleagues on different projects with Needham Market Academy and other areas. I think it was really good for our students and you all to see Colin's growth. Sometimes we see someone in their career and do a snapshot of where they are now and not know the journey they've gone through to get there, and that gives, like in Colin's case, like a holistic view of different elements of sport and physical activity through his previous experiences, as he said, in sports centres and swimming pools, etc. So that was really important. With the students, you guys are doing many different modules and units, and event management is one of them, for argument's sake. And myself, as a participant in the Great East Swim, I've done it twice and swam. And when you go to those events, and some of you may have done events that Colin has detailed in his presentation, or been an observer to them, you'll see just en masse how big they are and how much organisation it takes. So we obviously look at smaller events, but then you can see how it progresses onto a much bigger thing. And as Colin said in his slides there, the amount of spectators there are and participants, and all the planning and the months of planning that goes on to go on to that. So very much appreciate that, Colin.
Obviously we go back quite a long way now, and I don't know what it might be, around 10 years now, mate, if I'm totally honest. And just to let everyone know, Colin's someone I really respect football-wise. I didn't know the full ins and outs of Colin's career, I must admit. And it was really informative and interesting to me, and really important to give students the cross-section of different people and different things they do. For me, Cole, obviously I respect you massively, and probably one of the people I respect most in football in terms of your knowledge. But the big thing for me is the way you communicate it. You tend to see things really calmly and sometimes outside the box, and you communicate it in a way that benefits a lot of people, and sometimes that's not seen in football. So my question is, did you always have them communication skills and the ability to see things maybe from a different angle, or is that something that you've learned through your career and what you've done?
I appreciate you saying that, but I think it's something that you develop. I think it's something that you do learn through a variety of different situations and settings, whether that's working in leisure centres and you're working with a broad range of people. So I had somewhere in the region of 250 members of staff when I worked in operations. So, within that you have a whole raft of different people with different personalities and different traits. And it's about adapting and changing to suit the individual needs of that person to hopefully get the best from them. So I think it's something that you definitely learn. I think also over the course of my career, and one of probably the saddest parts of my career was when I was at the pools and we had a young lad die. Now, fortunately, I say fortunately, it wasn't fortunately, but it wasn't as a result of a drowning. It was the poor lad had an underlying health condition, but he died on the premises. And it's those sorts of experiences that sort of, I think, help you to understand and empathise and recognise how you need to change to deal with any given situation. And in that one, it was with families, but also the media, and also dealing with staff in that situation. I mean, a number of our staff were traumatised, particularly those that were sort of dealing with that young lad. Sadly, when the situation was occurring. So I think working in operational management helped me enormously in terms of, I hope, my ability to communicate effectively with a wide range of people. And obviously now I sort of work with a sort of different cohort of people, because I don't have any staff. But what I do is work with, from senior people within organisations, whether that's private sector organisations, whether it's elite athletes, in the case of the swims and some of the runs. So I think over the course of my career, that's sort of been it's been a big learning curve. It's sort of helped me to communicate the way that I do now.
I think that's really good for students here, because obviously as young people, not everybody's comfortable speaking in front of people. Not everybody's comfortable being that person under the spotlight. So it's encouraging that they can hear that. And I suppose being a young lad at school, you probably wouldn't have thought that you'd have gone on the journey you did, and obviously communicate as well as you did. So that's good for them to hear.
How old were you when you got the job as the leisure centre in Upswitch?
23 as assistant manager.
So did you move from anywhere to come to Upswitch?
Yeah, at the time, at different times now, but to get that promotion, to get progression in the leisure sector at the time, it was generally considered that you had to move. You could make certain progress in your local facility, but generally it was considered that by moving to another authority, moving to another location, it would enhance both that facility because you were bringing new ideas, but also it would help you as an individual. So it was quite a big step, because I moved from Hereford, which is 250 miles away, to Ipswich in order to make that next step in my career. And that's what I felt I had to do in order to move on. It's not quite so much like that nowadays. I think there is a bit more acceptance that, you can make that development and progress within your local facility, but it doesn't hurt to do it. I think certainly the perspective I got on leisure and the way leisure was delivered, and just as a very simple example, where I used to work, we had one big leisure centre with a a running track and a golf course, and that's where I started. But then when I moved to Upswitch, they had a different model altogether, where they had 4 community centres set around the outside of the town, with their main swimming facility in the middle of the town. So it was a very different operating model to that which I'd experienced previously, and that certainly helped me to sort of experience a different way of operating, a different way of delivering.
So would you say, like, you took a risk, if you like, moving from one side of the country to the other?
I didn't consider it a risk. I considered it a step forward, that it was where I wanted to be. I wanted to take a step into management. It was something that if I wasn't happy, I could go back, not necessarily into the same job, but you know, at the end of the day, I think I didn't anticipate living in Upswitch for 30 years. I'll be honest, that was never the thought at the time. But then other things influence your decisions, and having kids influenced my decision as to whether I then moved to another location. But no, I didn't consider it a risk. I had confidence in my own ability to do the job that I'd fortunately been appointed to. And to be honest, at the time, I found it quite exciting, moving away from home, moving away from everybody else, getting out on my own. I'd been married 12 months, but it was just it was good, to be honest.
If you had gone back, Grogs, there'd have been plenty of sheep waiting for you in Hereford, wouldn't there, mate? Huh?
Well, in the Welsh Hills, this place, you can't go wrong.
Cheers, Grogs. I just thought that asking about the risk factor and that, like, for the lads on the call, obviously, like, you know, like, obviously you're moving from one side of the country to the other, probably being like only 5 years older than some of the kids on the call, if you like. For me, I would probably look at that as a big sort of like gamble, if you like, because you're moving into like the unknown, you know, do you know what I mean? And then settling up somewhere completely different and sort of like being brave enough to do it, you know?
Yeah, I think it's everything in life is a risk, isn't it? And sometimes you just have to take it to get where you want to be, and that was the approach that I took. I think, you know, the times are different now. I think people move much more freely. You know, even getting from where I used to live, Hereford, to Upswitch, used to take about 5 hours. Now the road network is such that you can do it in 3. So, you know, very different times. No, I think if you can step out of your comfort zone, if you can go and do something that stretches you a little bit, then you know, it's good. It's good. You can always go back. You can always take a step back if it doesn't work.
What would you say the biggest lesson you've learned throughout your career has been? So, like, what would you tell your younger self if you could go back?
Not to get sent off so many times playing for East Borough or Brampton Athletic.
I think it was it would just be go for it, whatever. I mean, I think probably if I reflect on my career now, I didn't make moves in certain times quick enough. I should have pushed myself a little bit more. I got a little bit comfortable, particularly in the 20 years that I worked in operational management. That was probably the time where I really should have pushed on. And with family pressures and other things, you sort of maybe you sort of sit in a rut. So I think if I was going back again, I would certainly sort of tell myself to just sort of step out of that comfort zone. As much as I enjoyed that period, I maybe didn't make as much of my career in terms of I should have done.
This opportunity to Colin, thank you again. Much appreciate your time and that insight into your career and the good work that you're doing within Suffolk and physical activity. So on behalf of all the students and staff, many thanks for this afternoon.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. No problem. I hopefully see you all very soon.